Good evening and salutations, my Days of Lives fans. Huh, okay, so we're going to start off with Julie and Steve because I'm starting to have a real issue with Julie in a sense. So you think about Julie, and let's see, let's find a good picture. Hmm. So the thing about Julie and Steve is that Steve is not telling Julie that he's a lot closer to sit there finding this necklace. But he also tells Julie, like, listen, when I was younger, I did a lot of stupid stuff, being young and dumb and immature. And, it's not, it's one of those things where it's like pretty much kind of give him some slack, give him a bit of grace. But, Julie is just not having it, right? And there's a point where Julie runs into Doug, and Doug is like, listen, I tried to find a necklace. I couldn't, and I'm leaving town, and I want to sit there and apologize for what I did. The thing about Julie is that I feel like she's at an older age where she can understand that young people make stupid and bad and terrible choices at times, you know? And there's two ways I sit there and look at it, right? Depending on how often you are a repeat offender, sometimes you got to sit there and love people at a distance, right? But then there's another part where it's like you don't just give up on family, right? You don't just give up on family. I understand that that hurt and everything like that, but I'm like, do you really think that Doug would sit there and want that? You know, like again, Doug made while she's sitting there chastising Doug for sitting there saying, "Well, you don't live up to his name," and this, that, and the third. Doug was actually in jail at one point. Okay, and I don't know when she got the sale or whatever, but like she shoplifted. So I'm like, people make bad choices when they're young and dumb, and even when they're a little bit older. But like, you hold on to that grudge being at the final stage of your life, like really? And she pretty much just like, oh, just go and leave town or whatever, and don't come down, don't come back or whatever. But my whole thing about Doug is that Doug just can't do anything right, right? Like he meets up with this loan shark, and he's like, listen, I try to give you some money in good faith. I can't pay right now, but I'll sit there and give you some money whenever I can. The guy's not trying to hear it. Hell, at this point, he's like, listen, either you gonna come up with this money, or Holly, that rich girl, and her family's gonna sit there and come up with this money, or maybe we'll sit there and try to hit up Ari, which I don't think that the Hernandez family really have money like that, but I think he wants to sit there and try to do it just to drop a point home, right? And at this point, I'm like, bro, why don't you just call the cops? Call the FBI. Do something, because what you're doing right now, just trying to borrow a little money from Leo and working at the Brady pub. I'm like, bro, you know damn well you don't. You know what I'm saying? Like that job is not going to give you enough money to sit there and cover this debt. So unless you're prepared to sit there and rob a bank, I suggest you do something, anything else other than what you're doing right now, because you ain't doing shit. Okay, and you're treating both of these women like crap. Okay, yesterday he was just really out of pocket and just. Here's the thing. I get he wants to sit there and try to distance himself from both of them, but that's not doing anything. Like with yesterday, how he practically was like, "Nah, you got to get out. I'll pay for the bill, whatever. Just leave," very rudely. And then when Holly tries to hit him up for like tutoring and stuff like that, he is pretty much just like, "Nah, I'm good. I don't want to sit there and do that. But thank you anyway." Trying to keep him at a distance is not doing anything. What you think that they're not if they're not with you, then they're not a target. They're already a target. So like, what are you doing to sit there and fix it? See, my thing is, I don't have a problem with people sitting there making mistakes and making bad choices, but when you choose to sit there and sit on your hand and do nothing, or sit there and try to be, oh, come on, loan shark, if you just give me a little more time, bro, stop. Like, stop. I may not like the way that Julie Smith they're treating him, but I'm like, bro, it- I just I can't. Maybe it's just I don't have patience for that, but I can't. Let's talk about Sophia for a hot minute because Sophia apparently just gave birth all on her own. And I'm not sitting there saying it's not possible, but I'm just like, what? But see, what Sophia winds up doing is that she realizes that her mom is going to want her to have this baby, and that Tate is not going to sit there and give away this child once he sit there and sees her. I mean, sees him. Because remember, he had a conversation with her before, isn't it? Saying that he would wonder what that child's life would be when they grow up. So she already knows that he's going to be too attached to the child. So also, she's like she doesn't want that child to sit there and come in the middle in the way of her life and her life plans. So she winds up giving up the child to what I guess like the fire station or whatever they call them, like safe havens. And during his many shifts, Javi's many shifts since he started work as an EMT, he winds up finding the child. He brings her to the hospital, well, back to the hospital, because apparently he was there a couple of times before, and he tells Steve and Kayla about it. And at first, Steve is like, "Let's adopt this child. Let's sit there and force this child." And Kayla's like, we busy. We got things to do. We don't like we don't have time to sit there and be raising a child. Like we just don't have it. So Javi comes with the bright idea of taking the child home and surprising Leo with it. And I'm like, what are you doing? Like what are you doing? See, the thing about what Sophia is doing is very similar. It's similar to um what Brooklyn did many, many moons ago with Dante. What I don't like, what I don't like is that she ultimately kind of decided for Tate as far as doing this in some ways, because Tate could have changed his mind. She could have saw that child and be like, listen, I get that you don't want to sit there and raise this child, but I do, and I have a family to sit there and help me. So in some way, she kind of still took the choice away from him. But the reason why I'm not coming down so hard on her, like I did Brooklyn, is because Tate knew that, she was pregnant. And initially, he did want to sit there and give the baby up for adoption. So although I don't like the way that she's going about it and not telling Tate, because, listen, as a father, he has rights as well. This is something that he also had in mind to do. So I think, what I'm saying? I think that's the reason why I'm not coming down so hard on her, ultimately. Now let's get to this, what I like to call a very toxic conversation. So she wound up telling her mom about that she's gonna have to sit there and share custody with Xander, and that she don't like it because she despises the man, but also she still has a pull towards him, or she still has an attraction. She still loves him ultimately, and she's very torn up. She talks about how in her fantasy or delusion, as I like to call it, is that she hoped that her love would be enough to sit there and change him. But apparently, the change wasn't that deep enough, and he still wound up doing what he wound up doing. And Maggie, there's a point where she apologized. She's like, listen, I know you must be tired of me going back and forth my feelings about Xander. But see, Maggie talks about Victor and how she had a very similar, you know, back and forth with Victor. Victor did a lot of things that she didn't like and she didn't agree with. But she still loved him. She used the whole term, the heart wants what it wants. And ultimately, what she says to her is that she just learned how to sit there and deal with it to be with him. But I'm like, wait, so ultimately what your Smith is saying is that he was a very toxic man, and you had to put up with a lot of stuff that you didn't really like, but you did it. And that's what you want for your daughter? Like, I get it, your daughter's Smith, they're caught up in this vicious cycle, but I'm like, you should be Smith to telling your daughter that she should want more, she should want better than what you had with Victor, you know? Because she could have better. She could have better than being with somebody who, while she loves, does some very terrible, violent, and shitty things. I mean, y'all have heard of the term love isn't always enough, right? Love isn't always enough in that situation. You should be encouraging her to do that. But instead, you're just like, well, I lived in this vicious cycle for a while and I just learned how to deal with it. So, I see you're kind of following my footsteps. So just tough it out. What? I, okay. I don't understand how that just makes sense to sit there and tell your daughter that. I don't get that. I don't get that at all. Um, Now, like I said, Holly tries to text Doug about tutoring. And he sits there and blows her off again. So she wound up she wound up texting Tate, and she goes over Tate. And ultimately she's like, listen, I thought I had something with Doug, but clearly there was nothing there. And you're the guy that, I always want to sit there and want to being with. And I'm kind of just like, is that even really true? Because if Doug would have sat there and text you back, you wouldn't be having that conversation with him. The only reason why you're having that conversation is because he's been so cold and so distant with you. In his very piss poor attempt as far as trying to keep you safe. And that's literally what that is. Because like they ain't gonna do nothing. This is why I would sit there and keep Smith there saying that Doug can't do anything right. Because until he does something different, like I don't know, call the cops or the FBI or somebody, um, her ass life is still gonna be in danger. But they wound up kissing and being together and stuff like that. And I think when she got back, she wound up calling somebody. She wound up calling somebody and saying, I mean, Sophia wound up calling somebody and saying that I need your help. And there's a lot of rumors and things of that nature, and that they're saying that Tate is not the father of this child. So, what I said earlier about what she's doing to Tate and just kind of taking the the choice out of his hands may not even matter. Because if that's not his child, then like yeah. So it's similar, but I don't think it's exactly the same. Anyway, I feel like that's pretty much about it. I can't think of anything else. It's been a hot minute since I've done one of these reviews. And by the way, I just want to sit there and say, because I watched yesterday's episode, like I watched all of them. Chanel is just getting my last goddamn nerves. Like, she was always insufferable before when we had the old actress playing her. Now, granted, she has more of a purpose of being insufferable, but she's still being an insufferable, annoying ass person. I wish I had more time to sit there and do it yesterday, but I'm gonna try to do these reviews as often as I can. What I need y'all to do is I need y'all to sit there and share this video. Um, because that really does help. Because here's the thing, I want to sit there and try to get some more Days of Our Lives fans in my live streams. We mostly sit there and talk about General Hospital because that's the most popular soap. But I feel like Days of Our Lives has fans as well, and I would love to sit there and reach them, especially when I'm doing my live streams. So share this video in hopes of Smith also trying to get some more Days of Our Lives fans for the channel. Because even when I do my member stream last week, we went up doing bloopers for Days of Our Lives, and they were actually pretty funny. So yeah, there's a whole different reasons of why I need y'all to share this video, but sharing it will definitely help. Anyway, with that being said, I'm gonna go. I'll see you in the next video.